of the week, and it is the Stream Deck, Mike.
Yes, the Stream Deck. It's so huge that the run sheet doesn't even fit in a single 1080p screen that I'm using at the moment. And it's maybe because I'm zoomed in a little too much, maybe because too many people added crap to this run sheet. I don't know. But in any case, I am super excited about the new Steam Deck. Not to be confused with the Stream Deck. I know everyone's making that joke, but just making sure we're talking about the right thing here, because I'm not seeing any footage being shown on the screen. So this is the Steam Deck. So basically think of it as the Switch we've always wanted. I am like goddamn excited about this thing. It's a piece of hardware that I've been wanting to get my hands on for so long, and we'll talk about it in a sec. The fact that I can't even get my hands on it, and the reason is that it will start shipping in December 2021, but only for the US, Canada, EU, and the UK. So if you're in Australia, like we are, tough shit, you're not going to get your hands on this. There's also a reservation system, so you got to go in there. I think you got to pay $5 or something to reserve it. That puts your name on the list, and then as they make these consoles available, they will release them out to people. So the fact that Australians can't even order this thing is a bit of a shame. In fact, for me, it's a massive shame, because it's such a perfect device for what I've always wanted. Now, what can it do? So it allows you to play games directly from your Steam library, and it runs a modified Linux-based version of SteamOS, which the guys have actually said they're making openly available to other developers. So if anyone else wants to come along and create their own little device, they can use the OS, they can use the infrastructure, they can use all the whole platform, which is amazing. The fact that they're having that open to people. Now, in terms of specs, we'll talk about it in a sec. We'll go into the details, but it is powerful enough by what we're seeing to run most modern PC games at decent graphic settings. And we're talking about AAA titles here, not just indie games. And when we're talking about decent settings, I think you'd be able to tweak, because you can. It just runs all your games, which means you can have the normal settings that you normally would. I believe they try to optimize some of the settings for it. So by default, when you run a game, it runs the way it should, or the best way it can possibly run. But you can tweak any of the settings, which means you can target to try to get it running at 60 in handheld mode. And you can suspend games, which is kind of similar to the Switch. You can't do multiple suspensions the way that the Xbox does. So you can't have multiple games in flight that can be suspended, but you can suspend a game the way the Switch does.
Honestly, that's not a big loss, because the way that the Series X does it, it's technically impressive, but from a functional standpoint, it's messy. So
yeah, I wonder how many people do that, to be honest. I would love to see the stats.
I do it by accident more. I don't do it on purpose. Like, oh, that's right, I had that game and quick resume as well. Like, it's kind of like just happens.
Haven't they disabled it for some games because it's not working correctly?
Well, that's the thing, is it only works on certain games. So at that point, to me, it's like all or nothing. It's like only useful if it's available to 99% of stuff. So the fact that it can at least suspend one game is great.
It's massive. Yeah.
I mean, I do wonder how many people have multiple games at the same time. I just talked in the intro about how I think I was playing 5 games at the same time, but it was across multiple platforms. So I suppose you can get into a situation where you have it on the same device, but not a biggie, at least for us. Now, you can also use it, because it is effectively, and it's worth noting this, it's effectively a PC. It's a mini PC. If you could almost think of it as a laptop with an integrated screen and controllers, that's what this thing is, which means you can install Windows, you can install other game stores on it. So if you've got a library on your Epic Game Store, if you've got a library on GOG, no problem at all, apparently. You can install all those games on here. And I am super excited about being able to do something like that, purely because I've been ranting on about wanting to play games like Fallout, the original Fallouts, on the Switch, and I was disappointed it wouldn't come on there because apparently the source code doesn't exist or something like that. So this is perfect. It blows my mind how awesome this thing is. As you can tell, I'm really excited about this device.
We should call out, while you brought that up, that they've already said that if you do install Windows on the device, it's going to have a big performance hit on the device. So that would be battery and then also output as well, like frames per second.
Which is interesting, because the guys at Digital Foundry were stipulating that because SteamOS runs on Linux, whether installing Windows and having the games run natively on Windows on it would give you better performance of the games. Now, I don't know what battery issues you'd have, but they were basically saying that it might actually run better if Windows is installed because they run natively. I don't know. I'm keen to see exactly what's going to happen once it comes out and we get people testing this thing out. There'll be benchmarks and stuff, no doubt.
I like the guys at Digital Foundry. I think we all use them quite a lot, but I find their speculation to be a bit hit and miss. They're much better with raw facts and data and hands-ons. The thing is, why would Steam and Valve lie about that? It makes no sense, right?
No,
like they would have tested it. They would have already tested it, and they've already said it has a big performance degradation. So
that's a bit of an intro. Let's talk a bit about the pricing, which I actually think is pretty good for the hardware that you get. So
for the US.
And we'll talk about the speculated Australian pricing that we are speculating. Now, it comes in 3 separate models, the 64 gigabytes, 256, and 512. Biggest difference is, other than the price, of course, is the 256 and 512 use NVMe drives, which are faster, and the way they described it is the bigger the drive, the faster the performance as well. And I have seen this as well with other NVMe drives that I have, where the 1 terabytes do run faster than even the 512s that I have. Now, in terms of pricing, the 64 gigabytes, which, by the way, personally, I don't know what you do with 64 gigabytes. Yes, you can upgrade the storage with an SD, but there's so many games that are literally twice that size.
I think the people that are going to pick that up are probably people just looking to use it as an emulation device.
Or something like that, indie games.
Yeah.
Indies, yeah, but I mean, like, I think at that point, you'd probably still just go for 256, even if you're playing indies, honestly. But
I think it'd be fine, to be honest. Most indies don't have that crazy performance requirement.
I'm not talking performance. This is space, isn't it?
Yeah, but 64 gigabytes is fine for indies. I mean, look at the Switch. Like the Switch launched with 32 gigabytes, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's an indie machine."
Okay, indies. I think it's probably also okay for parents who go to EB Games or something, and they see the Switch, they see the Steam Deck available if it will be there, and they go, "Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll go for this."
But that's the whole thing. Like, let's be clear. Like, the only reason why they're making the 64 gigabyte one is so that they have a headline number of $399 USD in the States.
Absolutely.
That's the only reason why they're doing it.
That's what I think as well. I think they know that it's pretty gimped in that sense for PC gaming. 64 gigabytes is extremely gimped for PC gaming. There's no way in hell there's so many games that I have that I don't even think would fit.
Of course.
On that thing.
Put Call of Duty on it.
Well, you can't.
Even the
256 gigabyte model probably can't have Call of Duty on it, which is kind of funny. Anyway, in terms of pricing, the 64 gig is going for $399 USD, which we think is approximately 590 Australian, including GST. And then on top of that, you're probably going to get a koala tax. So what are we looking at? Like maybe 650 or something for the base model in Australia, which I
like how I've actually calculated all of this stuff in the run sheet.
Did you put that? Well, I don't know, because you overwrote the stuff that I did, and then
and then you just ignore it all.
Well, no. So I did my own calculations, but I don't know if these are my numbers or your numbers now.
No, I can clarify. So, Mike, the stuff that's here is what you put. I just simplified it.
Okay, cool.
And all of Intergot stuff is at the bottom about the Australian release.
So your stuff is basically take the US spot rate and then add GST. I think that's totally appropriate. That's like our equivalent money. Like going in and buying the store.
Equivalent if we didn't get doubly shafted.
Yeah.
So the GST you got to pay. You got no choice about that. So this is the absolute baseline.
$5.90
no
for the baseline.
You would ever see it cheaper than this, I don't think.
No.
But on top of that, you got to get the Australian tax. So you probably
let's cover that a little bit later. Let's cover that a bit later because there's all the Australian stuff.
So 256 gig model is 529 USD, and then the 512 gigabyte model, which again, faster NVMe drive, much like the 256. Also a special coating, anti-glare coating on the screen. That's the biggest difference with it as well. And then you get a couple of other small goodies in terms of stuff that honestly, like keyboard, something about the keyboard change interface. I don't know exactly what that even was. Sufficient to say that 649 USD. Now, in terms of the pricing, I actually think that is pretty bloody good.
Well, yeah, it's under $1,000 Australian, so it's like
it's under
$960
Australian.
Our equivalent, which is
given
damn
the
good.
Specs is damn good. I mean, this thing is a 4-core, 8-thread Zen 2 architecture from AMD. It'll be able to run games, and actually let's talk about the specs, and then we can have a go at what kind of performance do we think this thing will have. So as I said, it runs in the on the AMD Zen 2 architecture with 4 cores and 8 threads. Variable 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz in terms of its performance for the CPU. The GPU is Series 8 RDNA between 1 and 1.6 gigahertz, which is equivalent to about 1.6 teraflops. So it's about a 2 teraflop machine in total, which is already, I mean, it's hard to compare it to the Switch other than it's a handheld, because the Switch is on a platform that's been out for quite a while now. So it is probably more, I would say, equivalent to the maybe Xbox Series S, but not as powerful. But we'll get into a minute why I think that probably won't matter as much. In terms of RAM, it's got 16 gigs of DDR5, which is pretty bloody impressive for a device like this. I think, look, for modern gaming, 16 gigabytes is what you'd want. Anything less, you'd running into the risk of might not be able to quite get the performance that you need. The display, which I think is a critical thing, is 7 inches diagonally, of course. And this is really interesting. It runs at 1280 by 800.
It's horrible.
Which is a 16 by 10 resolution. And in case you're wondering why I'm kind of surprised by that, is pretty much most of the TVs today, most of the monitors that we get for gaming specifically, run at a 16 by 9 ratio.
Okay,
which would be a 1280 by 720.
It's not most. It's practically every single one you'd buy in the store is 16 by 9.
Yes, I would say that the only reason why... Okay, yes.
If I said I'll give you $1 million if you could shop at like JB Hi-Fi anywhere and buy a TV, not a monitor,
not a TV. A TV you can't. Sorry,
Yeah.
The only reason why I hesitated there is because one of the monitors that I use is my Dell, which is a 16 by 10.
Yeah, and a really
But
good mate of mine has a
rare-ish.
16 by 10 monitor as his primary gaming monitor. But I hate the resolution.
Which is rare.
I hate the resolution.
You're on mute, Swinny.
Oh, thanks for the heads up. Is every game going to have that as an option in its resolution?
So that's the thing.
No, it will, yeah, for sure. 100%.
Most games, I remember when I was playing it, supported that, so it wasn't a huge issue or anything like that. But I do wonder, I haven't seen anything about it now, and I know we're probably talking about this particular point too much. Why they made that decision, why they thought you needed more vertical real estate. I don't quite know why they did that. In any case, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal.
It would have to be wider. It would have to be wider if you want to keep the same
It's
type
taller, yeah.
No, but I'm saying the whole unit would have to be even wider if they're
potentially, if you
going
wanted to keep that,
still
yeah.
7
Or
inch,
they'll have to get like more, the top and the maybe that's the reason why they did it. You're right.
Or like it sounds dumb,
the
but
proportions.
this does happen. They might have just been able to get an insanely good deal on these 1280 by 800 monitor like display panels,
as
and
well
it could
to
have
keep the
like
price down. Yeah.
I've been a product manager in the past. If you look at some stuff and you go, it's like 1 cent per display versus $10 on this other display.
Yeah,
like
it's a huge difference.
Yeah, like you just make the calculus.
Well, I don't
Do people
think you
care?
get a display for 1 cent, but okay.
I'm just saying, like if it's that extreme,
I know what you mean. Yeah, it can make a huge difference, especially when you're talking about an entry price point of $399. That's very tight, I would imagine.
And you've got Gabe Newell out there saying that they had to struggle. They basically had to struggle to get it to where it is at the moment. So I think that those things matter. Like
big time.
Everything like that
centiles mattered.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of controls, you get 2 analog sticks with capacitive touch, so you'll know that you actually have your finger on them. You get the D-pad. You get analog triggers and bumpers, and a couple of really cool things. You get 4 assignable buttons at the back, which I think is really cool. So again, we talked about this on a previous episode with games like Dark Souls, how you can't run and use your camera at the same time. Well, now you can, because you can just assign one of those, or literally anything else you want.
And so I use that with Hori.
Are the bumpers analog as well?
No, I don't think the bumpers are analog.
Oh, so you said the bumpers
the triggers are analog.
Okay.
The bumper,
right.
the bumpers that you get, and specifically the assignable grip buttons at the bottom, which is what Intigo just showed as well on the Hori. I use it on the Hori too. It's freaking awesome. It makes you think, man, all controllers should have that by default.
I'm standing for grip buttons. Like
totally.
I feel like the next manufacturer for the next gen, whoever puts grip buttons, is going to be a genius. They're gonna kill it. Grip buttons are the best.
Apple will do it and go, they're the first in the world to ever do grip buttons. Now, one thing that I think is it's got a gyro as well, and of course it's non-detachable. One thing that I think is quite interesting is they went for the more PlayStation style of having both of the analog sticks aligned, compared to say Xbox or Switch or a lot of different ones where they're at a different angle. I don't think I'll mind that. We'll see how it is once it comes out. Now, another really cool thing when it comes to controls that I think is going to be a game changer for something like this is trackpads. So I don't know if you guys ever played around with the Steam controller back when it was.
No, I want to get one, but no.
I had one. I kind of wish I kept it. I ended up trading it back, didn't use it enough. Now I'm like, man, once you get used to it, that thing was actually really cool with the trackpads and stuff. So I think what that will allow you is to probably play games that traditionally would require a mouse a lot easier, because certain things just don't work with a controller that well. I think this is a really cool in between an actual mouse where you get way more precision. You also get more traditional mouse kind of controls. And in case I forgot to add, by the way, you can actually plug a mouse into this thing and use a mouse as well if you want to. It accepts all that because it literally is a mini PC laptop.
Well, and on that, in terms of inserting things into the device or using it, one thing that always annoys me about the Switch, probably almost my number one pet peeve, is I can't plug my AirPods into the Switch. So I actually went to the extent, I don't have it in front of me, of buying a little dongle that I insert into the Switch USB-C to then connect to my Bluetooth. Whereas this device, it's Bluetooth 5, everything. Like I can use a DualShock on this. So I could play like Rocket League on this, It's insane.
Oh, it's awesome. It's the compatibility, I think, is going to be really, really cool. And that's the same with any headset. I think the dude from IGN, Ryan? I forget.
Ryan McCaffrey.
Yeah, he actually said he tested his Apple EarPods with it, and it worked perfectly fine out of the box.
I think it's safe to say that any peripheral, any kind of accessory is probably going to work on this thing.
Probably.
It's like got the freedom in that regard. It's really, really good.
In fact, you can, in theory, and it was kind of covered, I think, by IGN a little bit, you can, in theory, even set up VR using this thing. You can use it as a VR machine with your Oculus. Now, it's not designed for that. I don't know what the performance is going to be like. It's probably going to be pretty shit, but it can be done, I think.
Well, my best mate growing up, that's what he wants to use it for, actually. That was the first thing he said. He goes, and by the way, sorry, I missed the start of your intro, so I'm not sure what you haven't spoken about, because the dogs were scratching at my door. I had to take them outside. But, the amount of people that are hitting me up about this device, oh, look at this, and they know I'm a big Switch fan as well, but they're just like, oh, look at this, is Nintendo complacent, or they're just excited about the device. It actually shocked me how many people who are kind of on the edge of gaming are really into this.
They might actually really get it. To me, dude, this is a game changer. I've personally wanted a device like this for so long. And the Switch filled that to some extent, but the Switch is very limited in what it can do in that sense. It's a very enclosed ecosystem.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to say game changer, so I've got it in the thumbnail. Just waiting for it.
Yes.
You finally said it. You finally said it.
So let's talk a bit about. Sorry, I'm in the middle of trying to explain this thing. So what else? Sorry about that little interruption. So what else do we have? Okay, wired connectivity, USB-C, kind of a given. We expect that it's going to have USB-C at this point. With DisplayPort 1.4, supporting up to 8K at 60 or 4K at 120.
So crazy,
which is pretty bloody crazy. So Rocket League, here you go. The display itself on the screen is only 60 hertz. So it's not 120, only 60. I think that's more than enough for a handheld. Well, I wouldn't say more than enough. It's what you'd want out of a handheld, I think. Now, battery is going to be an interesting one. I think the battery could make or break the device to some extent. It's got 40 watt hours, which They say is about 2 to 8 hours of gameplay. I love when it's like 2 to 8 because it so depends on what the hell you're playing. It's such a huge range, 2 to 8. But they gave an example where you can play Portal 2 for about 4 hours. And if you switch down to 30 FPS, naturally less performance means you're going to get longer battery life. Now, coming from the original Switch, which felt like it had a battery life of about 2 to 8 as well, generally on the lower end, especially when you play a game like Zelda, I think it's a huge deal. It'd be awesome to get more juice out of this, and hopefully future iterations out of it will increase the battery. Maybe an OLED screen coming up will reduce the drain. I don't know. We'll see what they'll do. But for now, I think it's adequate.
I think that comparison to the Switch is perfect because people didn't really complain too much about the Switch's battery life. And I think people felt that was enough time. So the fact that they're saying 2 hours, I look at that as like you're playing, Call of Duty or, Jedi Fallen Order or whatever it is, like Control, and you're getting 2 to 2.5 hours. That's my expectation. And I think that's enough. Like, I handheld game a lot, like probably more handheld game than sitting down to play games, and
99% for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like 2 hours, like I'm not normally playing for more than 2 hours in one stretch, and then I'll just put it on the charger or the dock or whatever. So yeah, I think it's really perfect battery life. I'm surprised they can get that much battery, to be honest.
Given what it does. Yeah. Now, just a bit about the battery and the performance, since we're talking about the performance as well. Whilst comparing it to modern day consoles, it's not quite up to the same level of performance. The fact that it only needs to run games at effectively 720p or aiming at around the 720p mark, I think it's more than adequate as a machine. In fact, it's going to run most games pretty damn well. And I think you can aim to get 60 out of a lot of the games that you have. And the fact that you can tweak things means guaranteed you can probably reach 60 in just about any game that you throw at it, which I think is going to be a huge, huge thing. Plus, and we'll probably talk about this in more detail if you guys want, the fact that it's so open means you can literally play Nintendo games that Nintendo don't even have or don't even want to release on their own platforms, which I think I'm going to love seeing a bunch of those videos come out where someone's playing, I don't know, Mario Galaxy that's not available on the Switch, on the thing.
Don't promote illegal activities, mate.
No, I'm not promoting it.
Also, Mario Galaxy is available on the Switch. You can't buy it in the store.
I thought
number 2. You just said number. You didn't say number 2, you idiot.
Well, how is it available? It is available through the store. How do you?
It's on All Stars. It's on All Stars.
It's on the All Stars. Of course,
it's covered a million times.
A cartridge that I can't find.
It is no longer available on the store. Thank you very much.
Yes, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. He said that.
Is the annoying thing about Nintendo. But anyway, now in terms of size,
that is annoying
because we're going on for quite a while now. So size-wise, it is bigger than the Switch, heavier than the Switch. It's something like 6 centimeters bigger than the Switch. For someone like me, who this isn't a euphemism or anything.
He's got massive hands, people.
Relatively big hands.
I can say
giant hands.
It's ridiculous. They're like, because you're like 6 foot tall, like 183-ish centimeters, right? We're all about the same height. But your hand, like I've got small hands. So I can.
Not small.
No, my hands are small.
His hands dwarf our hands.
Anyway.
Yeah,
it's
Swinny
ridiculous.
has normal size hands for his size. Like we're all about the same height.
Yeah.
Swinny has normal size hands for his height. I have small size hands for my height, right? You have like the opposite of me, which is massive size hands for your height. It's like ridiculous.
Yes.
I look like I got kid hands when I put my hands next to you.
But to all the ladies out there wondering, I have pretty average feet. Anyway, so what do we have? So we have, so it is, considerably bigger. For someone like me, I don't think that's going to be uncomfortable at all. I've never had an issue with the Switch being too heavy or anything like that. Not a problem at all. Smaller hands, kids, I don't know how that's going to work but I don't think this is targeted at that market.
Yeah, I don't see this targeted at the Pokemon crowd.
Exactly. So look, it's about 60% bigger and heavier than the Switch, which is a significant bump up. We talked about the dock. It is sold separately. I think it's going to be something that a lot of people will probably get. I don't know if I'll get it at launch, because I do find with the Switch, I use it 99% of the time just by itself. But the fact that I can take this thing, plug it into my TV in the bedroom, continue playing the Witcher there, boom, it's perfect. Can't wait for that.
But given that it's a PC, Valve weren't actually using their dock. They were using just a dock you could buy on Amazon.
Yes.
A USB-C dock. So they're all
'Cause you can
compatible.
just do that, yeah.
As opposed to the Switch, if you try to, use, like in the old days, if you used a different kind of dock, it was bricking Nintendo Switches. So
nuts.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a totally different kind of paradigm. You can go buy a $40, $50 dock and not the official dock for cheap.
As Swinny said, it sounds like you can literally just plug in almost anything you want into this thing, and it's probably just going to work, which is fantastic. So I think that's sort of most of the stuff that I wanted to cover, or that I was going to cover. I think you were going to talk about some stuff around the Australian context more than anything else.
And did you cover like how some games won't work out of the box on this?
So we didn't talk about that. We basically just said it will play most modern games, but we know they've talked a little bit about compatibility there.
Yeah. Well, I think at this stage it is actually a big issue because some of the most popular games on Steam are not playable out of the box currently. Now, whether they do some kind of special update which, can verify that it's a Steam Deck that you're playing on. So it's mostly like anti-cheat software that will not, because a lot of the anti-cheat software, they're really a rootkit on your system, which is kind of crazy that we all accept that that's what they do. And then the other one is some games don't have Linux support, like Rainbow Six Siege and things like that. So yeah, I'm really fascinated to see when this thing launches, how it goes, like with people installing Windows and how does it actually run, and how compatible is Windows because it's not built for it. Just on the Australian stuff. So I did a bit of research just about, Valve's history with Australia, which is very patchy, to be fair.
Is that because of our tax system? Is that because of our ACCC? Is that because of...
that. But then I think a lot of the practices that Valve have weren't also very fair, right? People buy games and they're broken. Like you can't even install it. And they refuse to give a refund. Like,
no,
it's crazy.
I'm just saying they probably have a pretty annoyed relationship.
Yeah, I think they hate Australia, honestly. I mean, Gabe recently escaped America to go to New Zealand, not Australia, right? So
that's what I was about to say. I think he's also now probably hates Australia even more living in New Zealand.
That's true. He's got the Kiwi. Yeah, we have a very funny rivalry, Australia and New Zealand, but it's like brothers. It's more like brothers. I will never let anyone from New Zealand forget that New Zealand's in our constitution as a state. It's never been removed. Anyway, so it hasn't been confirmed for Australia for launch. They've said that more regions will be coming in 2022. The history has always been Australia is almost like the last on the queue. Like it will launch in South Korea before it will launch in Australia. In terms of Valve Link and the Valve controller, it took 1 year for that to be released in Australia from when it got released in the USA. And then the Index is even worse. So the Index was over 2 years it took to come to Australia as compared to when it launched in the US. So
damn.
I feel like at the best case scenario, you're talking about Christmas 2022, that this will be available in Australia. And it would not shock me if it's mid 2023, which is, I don't want to be a bit of a wet blanket, but I think that's reality.
Yeah, let's be real about it.
I also looked at the pricing. So, if you look at the Apples of the world and things like that, because Australia used to get ripped off big time, they've actually been pretty good recently. And normally it's you take whatever the US price is, convert it, then a GST, and it's, within sometimes 0% premium, sometimes it's 5-10%. It's all pretty reasonable. Whereas with Valve, everything they've released has had between 25 to 30% premium on top of converting and GST. So when you kind of go through that logic, looking at like the spot rate, all of those type of things, you're looking at, I think, where they'll land is, the 64 gigabyte being 750 Australian, the 256 gigabyte being like $1,000, and then the 512 model being $1,250. Now, to wrap up the section, because it's been pretty long, let's just say that there are the prices, 750, 1,000, and 1,250. Okay. Are you buying this? Are you getting this when it launches?
Oh, hell yeah.
And what are you getting, Mike?
Look, I'll probably just go. I'm saying that now, but I'll probably go for the middle model.
How about you, Swinny?
This thing is super impressive, but I'm not going to get one for a few reasons. So, I don't think I will. I should say. First of all, the thing is so much heavier than the Switch, and I already find the Switch too heavy personally. And the only other thing is have they talked about if this thing heats up? is this thing going to end up freaking being super hot after you're playing it for 3 hours?
No, I haven't heard anything about that yet.
Well, no one's had a hands-on that would be able to satisfy that. Yeah,
that's so why they said it's big. Sorry, that one of the reasons why. No, just to on that point, Digital Foundry were talking about this. One of the reasons why maybe it's so big as well is bigger surface area means more cooling. They might actually need that level of surface area.
So basically, because of that, and also I just can't find a need. Not that anyone needs this, but my gaming needs are fulfilled by what I've got at the moment, so I can't really find any justification. But it's fantastic, even with the koala tax on top. It's still a fantastic value, and it's an impressive machine from a technical standpoint. Yeah. So, but I just don't think it kind of fits my gaming lifestyle, honestly.
Yeah, I think for me, like number one, if I was to get this, I would get the 512. There's no way I would get the 256. And like one thing is because I do so much handheld gaming, the anti-glare glass is actually massive. Like that is not, everyone's like burying that like, oh, that's nothing. That is actually like a massive thing. Like that stuff makes it like pop so much more. And then also just with a PC, it's not the same as a console. Console, they can strip things back. Whereas PC, it's like there's headroom that you need to account for with space. So 256 is like, like if you want to treat this like a PC, I would never build a PC with 256 gigabytes.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. So, even if you could put extra stuff onto an SD card, and then SD cards, I would imagine performance will take a big hit.
Yeah. So like I'm thinking of it like I wouldn't get it otherwise if it's just like it has to be the 512. And then the price actually does kind of like become a big factor for me because, if I said this device is $5,000, you wouldn't buy it, right?
No.
So there is a price curve. And for me, it's like, man, if this was like the Australian equivalent, which is like, let's say $999 for the 64 gigabyte model. Like at that stage, I feel like, I just kind of know myself well enough. And I love handheld so much. I'll probably just get it, right? Which is bad to say. But being $1,249 and maybe even higher, I'm like, I don't know, something about it. It's just
that's almost at that point twice as much as a PS5.
It's
getting to that territory of being twice as much. Yeah. Which is,
and then I've already got a PC that's powerful, like more powerful than this, obviously. So then it really is just genuinely like, do I want a portable version of my computer? And it's like, I do, but I don't know if I want to pay that much.
I'll pay $1,000.
But it's amazing. I'm going to be so fascinated when it launches. And I don't know if you guys covered it, but the form factor though, I want to have hands-on experience with this because I think, I obviously counter to what most people are saying about it, I think it's horrible. I think the button placement's being all crammed up to the top right-hand side and the D-pad being all crammed up to the top left. It just looks disgusting.
That was my initial kind of like, but then, I mean, I heard from people that, hey, they thought the same, but when they actually got it hands-on, it felt natural. So that's kind of alleviated a little of my concern.
But I look like I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there's a reason why they invite certain outlets. They never say bad things about hands-on experiences with stuff. It's just the history of these people, right?
I guess, IGN sounded, not Ryan, the other dude whose name I don't know. He said a few negative, well, I wouldn't say negative, but a few critical things about it.
I'm trying to grab something.
It's gonna, I don't know. Look, I think time will tell, and I think it's not the final thing.
This is an audio podcast, Intergot.
I'm probably one of the wackiest people to actually have a Wii U set up on my desk, and like I can just grab it whenever I want.
Hey, so is it wacky the fact that I've got it hooked up to my TV right now?
No, that's what I have as well. So I'm just holding up the gamepad, right? Which I don't hate, but
similar.
On launch, everyone's like, "Oh, this is great," and then over time, people really hate the placements of the sticks being right at the top corners. Like people would always complain about it after people keep playing it and they're just like, it's just a really annoying location. And I look at the Steam Deck and I'm like, it is exactly like the Wii U being right up to the edges of the actual unit. So, but you need to play it. You need to have hands on. I want to see how it lands.
Here's the thing though, and maybe it's intentional in the sense that the right stick, they're maybe thinking that a lot of people are going to use it for games like FPSs or as a mouse or whatever, and they use the actual touchpad, which is offset. And I wonder if there's an element of intentionally placing the touchpad at the bottom because people will use it more. than the actual stick. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell, because I could imagine that's more accurate for FPS games, things like that. But anyway,
I guess
I'm looking forward to this thing.
The one benefit of it coming to Australia so late is that we'll have the benefit of hearing what people say about it and what the quirks are, and we'll be very well informed in Australia before we have to pre-order it even.
And we pay for the privilege.
We do. The premium. We get it later and we pay 30% more. All right, let's move on to our next story. That was